The space station was silent. Broken walls floated in the cold darkness with sparks of dying machines flashing like weak stars. The war had ended weeks ago, but its wounds were still fresh. Ships destroyed, homes shattered, and lives scattered into the endless night. In one of those broken halls, an alien girl crawled through the dust. Her body was weak, her skin marked with bruises, and her clothes long torn away in the chaos. She had nothing left, no food, no shelter, no family. Only fear and cold. She moved slowly, afraid of every sound. The station was not empty. Raiders and scavengers came often, searching for anything they could steal. If they found her, they would not show mercy. She hugged herself tightly, trying to stay hidden, her body shaking from both cold and shame. Once she had a home, a name, a place in the galaxy. Now she was nothing, just a shadow waiting to be erased. Then she heard footsteps, heavy, steady, echoing through the ruins. Her heart stopped. Someone was coming. She pressed herself against the wall, her body trembling. If it was raiders, she was finished. Slowly the sound grew louder, closer, until a tall figure appeared through the smoke. It was a human. Her breath caught. She had heard stories about humans, fierce, ruthless, unforgiving. They were the ones who had fought back when the galaxy tried to break them. Some said humans were monsters of war, others said they were saviors. She did not know which to believe. All she knew was that this human was armed. A rifle hung at his side, and his armor was scarred with the marks of many battles. He stopped when he saw her. For a long moment, silence filled the hall. His eyes studied her, and she felt exposed, like he could see her weakness, her fear, her shame. She wanted to run, but her legs were too weak. She wanted to speak, but her voice was gone. The human raised his weapon slightly. Her chest tightened. This was it. Her story was ending here. She closed her eyes, waiting for the shot, but the shot never came. Instead, the sound of metal hitting the floor echoed softly. She opened her eyes slowly, confused. The human had lowered his weapon. He placed it down beside him and took a step forward. His voice was low, calm, and steady. "You're safe," he said. "Safe?" She almost laughed, though no sound came out. She was not safe. She was homeless, naked, and broken. No place in the galaxy could be safe for her anymore. Yet, his tone was different. There was no cruelty in it, no threat, just warmth. He removed his armored gloves and extended a hand toward her. His eyes were not the eyes of a monster. They were tired, filled with scars of things he had seen. But inside them she saw something else. A small light. A human light. She froze, unsure what to do. This could be a trick. Why would a human help her? Why would anyone? She had nothing to give. She was nothing. Still, her body moved on its own, reaching forward with shaking fingers. Her hand touched his, and in that simple touch her fear cracked. For the first time in many days she felt warmth. The human gently pulled her up. She stumbled, but he held her steady. "You don't belong here," he said. "Come with me." Her mind screamed, with questions. Why was he doing this? Who was he? Where would he take her? But her voice still could not form the words. All she could do was follow. Her bare feet stepped carefully on the cold floor as he led her through the ruins. They passed broken halls filled with shadows. The human moved like he had walked these halls many times before, never once showing fear. She stayed close behind him, afraid to lose sight of his armor, afraid that if she let go, the darkness would swallow her again. Finally, they reached a small chamber. A single light glowed weakly above, and inside, there was a blanket, a half-broken heater, and a few pieces of food sealed in containers. It was nothing compared to the great halls she once knew, but here, in this ruined place, it felt like a palace. The human turned to her. "Sit," he said gently. She lowered herself onto the blanket, still hugging her body, unsure if she should trust him. He opened one of the containers and handed it to her. Her stomach growled loudly, but she hesitated. He noticed her fear and took a small bite himself first, then placed it back into her hands. Slowly, carefully, she ate. The taste was plain, but it was more than she had eaten in days. Warmth spread through her empty stomach, and tears filled her eyes. She turned her face away, ashamed of her weakness, but the human said nothing. He only sat across from her, silent, watching like a guardian. In that silence, she realized something strange. He could have left her to die. He could have ignored her. He could have taken her prisoner. But he did not. He chose to help. She could not understand why. As she pulled the blanket around herself, her mind whispered a dangerous thought. Maybe. Not all humans were monsters. Maybe some still carried hearts strong enough to save even someone like her. But questions remained. Who was this human, really? Why was he alone here? And most of all, what would he want in return? The outpost was still dangerous. Raiders could return at any moment. And in the darkness beyond, the galaxy still burned with war. She did not yet know it, but her choice to take that human hand would change everything. Her life, her future, her very heart. It would never be the same again. The night inside the ruined station felt endless. The alien girl sat wrapped in the blanket, her body still trembling from cold and fear, though the small heater's glow gave her a fragile sense of warmth. Across the chamber, the human soldier remained quiet. He did not speak much. He only sat with his back against the wall, his rifle leaning beside him and his eyes half hidden under the shadow of his helmet. She watched him carefully. Every move he made was slow, steady, controlled. He reminded her of a hunter waiting for danger, to strike, always prepared, always silent. She wanted to ask him who he was, why he had helped her, but the words caught in her throat. Her voice felt locked away after so many days of suffering. The human finally broke the silence. "Eat more," he said simply, pushing another container of food toward her. His voice carried no softness, yet no cruelty either. It was the voice of someone who had lived too long in war, someone who had learned to hide his heart behind stone. She obeyed, eating slowly. Each bite gave her a little more strength, but her eyes kept wandering back to him. There was something about him she did not understand. His armor was scarred with old battles, yet polished carefully as if he still respected it. His hands carried rough scars, some fresh, some deep and old. His face, though hidden for the most part, carried lines of exhaustion, like someone who had seen too much and carried memories too heavy to forget. When she finished, he collected the empty container without a word. He did not ask her name. He did not ask where she came from. That silence unsettled her even more than questions would have. Did he already know? Or did he simply not care? Finally, she found her voice, though it came out weak and trembling. "Why?" The human paused, glancing at her. "Why what?" Her lips shook. "Why, help me?" For a long moment, he did not answer. He looked at her with eyes that seemed to search deep, not just at her face, but into the hollow space inside her chest where hope once lived. Then he finally said, "Because you were cold." Just like that. No grand reason, no demand. Just because she was cold. Her heart twisted at the simplicity of it. Could it really be so simple? In her world, kindness was always a trap. Always a bargain. Always something you paid for later. Yet here was a human soldier, alone, carrying nothing but scars, choosing to help because she looked cold. She wanted to believe him, but fear clung to her like chains. That night, she could not sleep. The shadows of the station haunted her. Every sound of shifting metal or distant echo made her flinch. She feared raiders might return. She feared the human might change his mind. She feared the galaxy itself had marked her for suffering. But as she sat awake, she noticed something. The human never slept deeply. Even when he closed his eyes, his hand rested near his rifle. His ears twitched at every noise. He was a soldier through and through, a protector even in silence. Somehow, knowing he was there, guarding the small chamber, eased her heart enough that she finally closed her eyes and drifted into restless dreams. The next day she followed him as he searched the ruined station. He moved with careful precision, checking corridors, sealing doors, gathering supplies. She trailed behind, clutching the blanket around her body. Sometimes he gave her small tasks, carrying water, holding a light, checking for scraps of food. They spoke little, but each time his voice called to her, she felt a strange warmth she had almost forgotten existed. Yet as the hours passed, she began to notice something strange. He always avoided certain corridors. He never went near the eastern sector of the station. Whenever they came close, his body tensed, his jaw tightened, and he silently turned away. Curiosity burned inside her. What was he hiding there? Why avoid that place? Later, when he left briefly to check an outer hatch, she dared to slip away. Her bare feet carried her toward the eastern sector. The halls were darker here, filled with shadows and broken panels. She moved carefully, the blanket trailing behind, her heart pounding. Then she found it, a chamber sealed but cracked open. Inside she saw burned armor, shattered weapons, and the remains of a battle. Old blood stained the floor. Symbols carved into the walls marked it clearly. It had once been a human squad's fallback point. Her chest tightened. Suddenly she understood. This was not just a ruined outpost, this was a grave. His grave. He had lost people here. His squad. His family in war. She covered her mouth, her eyes wide. No wonder he avoided this place. The pain of memory lingered too strongly in these walls. As she turned, she saw him standing at the doorway, silent. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, she thought he would shout or demand why she came here. But he did not. His voice was steady, though heavy with, "Wait. Now you know," she lowered her gaze, ashamed. "I'm sorry." He walked past her, kneeling near the broken armor. His hand rested on one piece, fingers brushing over it like a prayer. "Don't be sorry. Just remember." She felt her throat tighten. This man was not simply a soldier, wandering the ruins. He was a survivor carrying ghosts, yet even with that weight he had chosen to help her, to give warmth, food, and a place to rest. Why? Why would someone broken still choose to save another? That night, back in the chamber, she lay awake again, staring at the dim light. Her heart whispered questions with no answers. Who was this man truly? What did he want? And most of all, what would happen when the galaxy discovered that she, a lost alien, had found shelter in the heart of a human? For the first time since her fall into despair, she felt something strange. Not just fear, not just confusion, but the faint flicker of hope. A dangerous hope. A fragile hope. Yet hope, nonetheless. The following days passed in uneasy silence. The alien girl grew stronger, though her body still carried scars of hunger and fear. The human soldier shared his food and water, never asking for thanks. He remained distant, like a shadow that guarded her without admitting why. Yet she began to notice small changes. Sometimes when he thought she was not looking, his gaze softened, as if he wanted to speak, but swallowed the words. But peace never lasted in ruins. It began with faint sounds in the distance, metal boots striking against hollow walls. The girl froze, her heart racing. She knew that sound well. Raiders. The scavengers of war. They stripped the dead, tortured the weak, and hunted survivors like prey. The human stiffened immediately. His hand gripped his rifle, and his eyes narrowed. "They're close," he muttered. He turned to her, his voice sharp yet calm. "Stay here, do not move." Her chest tightened. "What about you?" He checked the charge of his weapon and slid an old knife into his belt. "I'll stop them." Panic rushed through her. She could not bear the thought of losing the one person who had shown her mercy. "Wait," she whispered. But he was already moving, his body fading into the shadows like a predator returning to its hunt. Minutes dragged like hours. The girl sat in the chamber, hugging the blanket, her ears straining at every noise. Then came the first shot. A sharp crack echoed through the halls. Another shot. Then a scream. She pressed her hands to her ears, trembling. She could not stay still. Not again. Not after everything. Her eyes landed on the corner of the chamber where a second weapon lay. A human rifle, old, cracked, but still functional. He had left it there, maybe for himself, maybe for her. Her fingers hovered above it, her heart pounding. She had never fired such a weapon. She was no soldier. But if he fell out there, she would lose the only light left in her broken world. She picked it up. The weapon felt heavy, strange in her hands. But she forced her trembling body to stand. Step by step she moved down the hall, the sound of battle guiding her. The closer she came, the louder it grew. Raiders shouting, weapons clashing, the deep thunder of gunfire in narrow steel corridors. She reached the corner and froze. The human was there, standing like an iron wall. His rifle spat fire, each shot precise, each movement deadly. 2 raiders already lay fallen at his feet. 3 more circled him like wolves trying to flank him. His face was grim, but his eyes burned with a fire she had never seen before. For a moment she almost believed he was unstoppable. But then, a 4th raider emerged from the shadows, raising his weapon toward the human's unguarded side. She did not think. She did not breathe. She lifted the rifle in her hands and pulled the trigger. The shot cracked like thunder and the raider collapsed before he could fire. Smoke rose from the weapon in her shaking hands. Her chest heaved, her eyes wide with shock. She had done it. She had saved him. The human turned sharply, his eyes locking on hers. For a heartbeat they stared at each other across the battlefield. She expected anger, for disobeying his order, for risking herself. But instead, he gave her a single nod. A soldier's nod. A gesture of trust. Fueled by that silent approval, she moved closer, firing again, clumsy but determined. Together they fought, side by side. His precise strikes guided her, covering her mistakes, while her presence kept him from being overwhelmed. In less than minutes the raiders lay silent, their echoes fading into the dead halls. The girl lowered her weapon, her body shaking from both fear and adrenaline. Her hands were numb, her breath sharp. She looked at him, waiting for his judgment. The human walked toward her, his steps slow but steady. He stopped only a few feet away, his eyes locked on hers. Then, to her shock, he placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "You did well," he said. Her lips parted, but no words came. Praise was something she had not felt in so long. It felt strange, heavy, and yet warm. "But next time," he added, his tone softer but firm. "Don't hesitate. Hesitation kills." She nodded quickly, gripping the rifle tighter. She wanted to tell him she was afraid, that she was not like him, not a warrior. But she also knew the truth. Fear had not stopped her when it mattered. As they returned to the chamber, the silence between them was different. Before, it had been filled with distance. Now it was filled with something new. A bond forged not by words, but by battle. She had stood beside him, and he had trusted her with his life. That night, she sat with the rifle across her lap, her eyes drifting toward him as he repaired his armor. The question echoed in her heart. Why had he trusted her? Why had he given her that chance? She was nothing, a broken outcast. Yet to him, she had been worth the risk. As she wrapped herself in the blanket, her thoughts grew heavy with confusion. She did not understand this human. She did not understand why he fought for her, why he protected her, why he now treated her as if she belonged. But in her chest, where only emptiness had lived, something new stirred, a fragile feeling, a dangerous one. Hope. And with hope came a new fear. What if she lost him? The station was quiet again, but the silence no longer felt the same. The smell of burned metal and blood lingered in the air after the fight. The alien girl sat in the chamber staring at the weapon in her lap. Her hand still shook from the battle, but her mind was restless for another reason. She had seen a different side of him, the human soldier who fought like a storm, yet carried eyes heavy with sorrow. She wanted to know who he was, not just as a warrior but as a man. The human was repairing his rifle near the heater, his movements steady, mechanical. He had cleaned every piece of armor, replaced damaged parts, and set aside a pile of empty cartridges. His silence was as sharp as his blade. She gathered her courage and finally whispered, "You trusted me." He did not look up. "You earned." Her chest tightened. She wanted to ask more, to peel away the stone wall he had built around his heart. But when her eyes drifted back to the eastern sector, the part of the station he always avoided, her curiosity flared again. She could not stay silent any longer. "What happened there?" she asked softly. For the first time, his hands paused. The air between them grew heavier. He set down the rifle and leaned back against the wall, his gaze distant, fixed on something far beyond the ruined ceiling. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, raw. "My squad died there." Her heart sank. She had guessed as much, but hearing the words felt like a blade. He continued, each word weighed with pain. "We were sent to defend this outpost. Dozens of us. Good soldiers, good friends. The enemy came harder than we expected. We fought for days, holding every hallway, every room. But one by one they fell. I watched them bleed, burn, break, until only I was left." His voice broke into silence. The girl's throat tightened, but she forced herself to whisper, "You survived." He gave a bitter smile, one without joy. Survival isn't always victory. The heater crackled weakly, filling the silence between them. She wanted to move closer, but fear held her back. Not fear of him, but fear of the weight he carried. His grief felt like a shadow that could swallow them both. She searched for words, but none seemed enough. Instead, she asked the question that burned inside her. "Then why? Why did you save me? I am not human. My people, they fought against yours. Maybe even killed your friends. You should hate me." His eyes finally met hers, sharp yet strangely calm. "I do not judge you by their sins. You were cold, starving, alone. You looked like I once felt. I couldn't walk away." Her breath caught. For the first time, she understood. It wasn't pity. It wasn't duty. It was recognition. He had seen in her the same brokenness he carried inside. And instead of turning away, he had chosen to reach out. But even as warmth stirred in her heart, another fear grew. If his squad had been destroyed here, then surely more enemies would return. The raiders were only the beginning. This place was cursed, a graveyard. How long could they survive before the galaxy's chaos swallowed them too? That night, she dreamed of fire and screams. In her dream, she stood in the eastern chamber, watching human soldiers fight bravely as the enemy cut them down. She saw the man, her human, dragging wounded comrades, shielding them with his own body until he stood alone among the dead. And in the dream, when he turned toward her, his eyes were hollow, empty. She awoke in tears. The human sat nearby, awake as always, polishing his knife. He did not ask about her dream, but his eyes lingered on her face longer than usual, as if he already knew. The days after grew tense. They spoke more, but their conversations always circled back to survival. He taught her how to load weapons properly, how to move silently through corridors, how to spot signs of danger. She listened carefully, absorbing every word, because she knew these lessons were not just about survival. They were about trust. Every moment he trained her, he gave her another piece of his guarded faith. One evening, as they sat near the heater, she asked the question that haunted her most. "What will you do after this, when you leave this place?" He was quiet for a long time before answering. "I don't know." His voice carried exhaustion, but also a strange emptiness. "There is no one left to return to. The war took them all." Her heart ached at his words. For the first time, she realized he was not only giving her shelter, he needed her too, even if he would never admit it. Two broken souls clinging to each other in a galaxy that had already turned its back on them. And yet, even in the shadows of grief, she felt something dangerous grow stronger inside her. It was not just gratitude, not just hope. It was connection. But connection was dangerous. If she lost him, it would break her completely. And in this cruel galaxy, loss was always waiting. The girl curled into the blanket, pretending to sleep, but her mind would not rest. She thought of the human's squad, of his scars, of his quiet strength, and for the first time since she had been cast into the void, she prayed, not to gods, not to fate, but to the human sitting beside her. She prayed he would live. She prayed she would not lose him. She did not yet know it, but that prayer would be tested sooner than she ever imagined. The station grew quieter in the days that followed, but silence never meant safety. The alien girl and the human soldier lived like ghosts among broken walls, moving carefully, rationing food, keeping weapons close at hand. Yet something had changed. She no longer looked at him as a stranger. She no longer saw herself as just a helpless shadow. Together they had fought, bled, and survived. A bond had formed in the ruins, one that neither of them fully understood, but both could feel. One morning, while she helped him sort through scavenged supplies, a distant sound broke the fragile peace. Engines, heavy, powerful, echoing through the dead halls of the outpost. The human froze, his eyes narrowing. "Not raiders," he whispered. "Something bigger." The girl's blood ran cold. She followed him to the viewing deck, where through shattered glass they saw it, a ship descending slowly toward the outpost. It bore the mark of a rival faction, one known for cruelty. Not scavengers, not simple raiders, soldiers, well-armed and ruthless. The human's jaw tightened. "They'll search the outpost, they won't leave survivors." Fear gripped her chest. She had only just begun to feel alive again, only just found a place where she felt safe. Was it all about to be taken away? She turned to him, her voice breaking. "We can't fight them, not all of them." He did not answer at first. He adjusted his rifle, checked the blade at his belt, and tightened the straps on his armor. His silence was answer enough. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You'll die." He looked at her then, his eyes calm but heavy. "I already died once when my squad fell. Everything after has just been waiting." He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "But you still have a chance. If I fight, I can buy you time to escape." Her heart shattered at his words. Escape? Leave him behind? The thought tore through her like fire. She grabbed his hand, clutching it desperately. "Don't you dare. Don't you leave me. Not after everything." For a moment, something broke through his soldier's mask. His eyes softened and his voice lost its edge. "Then fight with me. Stand. Don't run." Her fear clashed with her determination, but in that moment she made her choice. She would not leave him. If he was to fall, she would fall beside him. If he was to fight, she would fight too. She nodded, gripping her weapon tightly. The invasion began swiftly. Soldiers stormed the halls, their boots shaking the ground, their voices barking orders. The human and the girl moved through the shadows, striking quickly and retreating. He fought with the precision of a veteran, every shot cutting down enemies before they could react. She stumbled at first, her shots clumsy, but his steady presence anchored her. Together they turned corridors into traps, their partnership becoming a rhythm of survival. The enemy grew frustrated. More poured in. Explosions rattled the station, sending sparks raining down. The girl's heart pounded, but she stayed close to him, refusing to let fear consume her. She had been weak, lost, and broken once, but now she was fighting, not only for her life, but for his. Hours felt like days. Their bodies ached, their ammo ran low, but still they stood. Finally, when the last enemy fell, silence returned. A silence heavy, suffocating, but alive. The girl collapsed against the wall, her body shaking, her weapon slipping from her hands. The human stood nearby, his chest heaving, his armor scorched and dented. Slowly, he lowered his rifle, his eyes scanning the hall one last time. Then he looked at her. "You didn't run," he said. She forced a weak laugh through her tears. "Neither did you." For the first time since she had met him, he smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a broken smile, a true one. It was faint, tired, but real. They returned to the chamber together, their bodies bruised, their spirits heavy but unbroken. She sat close to him by the heater, her blanket around her shoulders, his presence like a shield against the darkness. After a long silence, she spoke softly. "You said you had nothing left, no one to return to, no place to call home." He nodded slowly. "That's true." She hesitated, her voice trembling, but her heart firm. "Then, stay with me. If you gave me a place in your world, I can give you one in mine. Maybe we are broken, but together, we can still build something." His eyes widened slightly as if her words had struck deeper than any wound. For a moment he said nothing. Then he reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. His touch was warm, steady, unshaking. "You already gave me something," he said quietly, "a reason to keep living." Her chest tightened, tears burning her eyes. For so long she had been nothing, homeless, naked, forgotten. But here in the ruins of war she had found a place. Not in walls or blankets, not in stations or ships, but in a human's heart. Together they sat in silence, not as strangers, not as survivors, but as something new. Two broken lives, stitched together by trust, by hope, by the simple choice of one human who refused to turn away. And as the stars burned outside, the galaxy itself seemed to whisper a truth it had long tried to forget. Even in the darkest ruins, humanity carried a light that could change everything.